Margaret stood in her kitchen, her hands moving with the rhythm of memory as she kneaded bread dough on the counter. The late afternoon sun streamed through the window, throwing long golden lines across the wooden floor. For years, she had made bread on Fridays. It was a habit, a way to keep her mind busy, though lately it only reminded her how empty the house had become. The chairs were always neatly in place, the table spotless. The cupboards stocked, but the laughter that used to fill these walls had faded into silence. Her husband had been gone for a decade. Her children were grown, scattered across the country with busy lives of their own. She didn't blame them, but she felt the ache of loneliness more deeply with each passing year. The kitchen, once the heart of her home, now felt like a room where time stood still. She wiped her hands on her apron, pressing the dough into a round shape. The smell of yeast filled the air, warm and familiar, a comfort she clung to. Outside, a few leaves rattled against the window pane as the autumn wind picked up. She was about to set the dough aside to rise when she heard 3 soft knocks at the front door. Margaret froze. Visitors didn't come without calling first. The doorbell worked, so why would someone knock? For a moment, she wondered if it was a neighbor or perhaps a delivery. But something about the sound of those knocks felt unusual, gentle, almost hesitant, as though whoever stood outside wasn't sure they belonged there. Her heart gave a quick thud, and she brushed her hands against her apron again, leaving faint flour marks across the fabric. She stepped into the hallway, her slippers patting softly against the floorboards, the silence of the house pressing in around her. Each step toward the door carried a strange mix of curiosity and unease. When she pulled it open, the late sunlight spilled over the figure standing there. Her breath caught. "Daniel?" she whispered. Her grandson stood on the porch, his hands shoved into the pockets of his jacket, his hair slightly disheveled as if he had rushed there. He was 24 now, a young man with sharp features and eyes that carried more weight than his years should. She hadn't seen him in months longer than she liked to admit. "Hi, Grandma," he said, his voice soft, almost uncertain. Margaret's chest tightened, warmth and surprise flooding her all at once. She stepped aside quickly. "Daniel, come in." "What are you doing here without calling?" "You scared me half to death." Kay gave a faint smile, stepping into the familiar hallway. "I'm sorry, I needed to see you." She closed the door behind him, her heart beating faster than it should have. She tried to steady herself, to understand why her grandson, who usually texted or called before visiting, had appeared so suddenly, looking as if he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. Back in the kitchen, she gestured for him to sit at the table. The same table where he had eaten cookies as a boy, where he had done his homework while she cooked, where he had once told her all his dreams about the future. Now he sat differently, quieter, older, his hands resting uneasily on the wood. Margaret moved quickly, pouring him tea from the pot she kept warm on the stove. She set the cup in front of him, watching his fingers curl around it. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched, filled only by the faint hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the old kitchen clock. Finally, she broke it. "Daniel, you look troubled. What's going on?" He lifted his gaze to hers, and for a brief second she saw the boy he used to be, the one who ran through her garden, who asked endless questions, who laughed until his stomach hurt. But that boy was gone, replaced by a young man whose eyes carried shadows she didn't recognize. "Grandma," said slowly, "I need to tell you something. Something I haven't told anyone else." Margaret's pulse quickened. She leaned slightly closer, sensing the weight of his words. You can tell me anything. You always could." He nodded but didn't speak right away. His jaw tightened, as if he were holding back. He looked down into his cup, the steam curling upward between them. Margaret waited, her heart pressing against her ribs, a quiet ache of anticipation building inside her. The air felt different now, heavier, as though the walls themselves were listening. She thought of all the moments they had shared over the years, the Christmas mornings, the birthdays, the summer evenings spent sitting on the porch. And yet, in that instant, she felt that something new and unexpected was about to begin. something that would change the way she saw him forever. Margaret reached out, resting her hand lightly on the table near his. "Go on, Daniel. Whatever it is, you don't have to carry it alone." He looked at her then, truly looked at her, and his eyes were filled with a depth that made her chest tighten. It wasn't just sadness. It wasn't just worry. It was something more, something she couldn't quite name. And in that moment, Margaret knew this wasn't an ordinary visit. This was the start of something she had never imagined. The bread dough sat rising quietly on the counter, forgotten. Outside, the wind rattled the leaves harder against the window. Inside, the silence between them thickened. A fragile space where secrets lived. Then Daniel opened his mouth, his voice low and steady. "Grandma, I came here today because I can't keep this to myself anymore." Margaret held her breath. She knew his next words would change everything. Daniel sat at the old kitchen table, his shoulders tense, his eyes fixed on the steaming cup of tea in front of him. Margaret lowered herself into the chair across from him, her apron still dusted with flour, her hands folded neatly in her lap. She studied him the way only a grandmother could, seeing not just the man he was, but the boy he had once been. She could tell something inside him was heavy, pressing him down. "Daniel," she said softly, "you came here for a reason. Tell me." He swallowed, his throat working as if the words were too large to push out. Finally he spoke, his voice low but firm. "Grandma, I've met someone who makes me feel alive again. But it's not simple." Margaret leaned back slightly, her heartbeat quickening. A part of her felt relief was love, not danger, not trouble with the law or some illness. Yet the hesitation in his voice told her this was not the kind of love that would be easy. She smiled gently, trying to steady him. "Love is never simple, Daniel, but it is always worth listening to. Who is she?" He hesitated, his gaze flickering to the window where the last of the sunlight slipped across the glass. His fingers tightened around the teacup. "She's older than me. Much older, and I can't stop thinking about her." The words fell into the room like stones in a pond, sending ripples through the silence. Margaret's breath caught. She hadn't expected this. Not from him. Not today. Her first instinct was to push the thought away, to remind him of the normal path young men were supposed to follow, meeting someone close to their age, building a family, starting fresh. But when she looked at him again, she saw not recklessness in his eyes, but sincerity. "Older?" she asked carefully, her voice calm but curious. He nodded, his jaw tightening. "Yes. Old enough that people stare when we're together. Old enough that my friends laugh behind my back. Old enough that my parents wouldn't understand." Margaret reached across the table, her hand brushing against his. "Daniel, people will always talk. What matters is what's here." She pressed her hand lightly against her chest. "What your heart knows." Daniel's eyes softened, and for the first time since he had arrived, he let out a small sigh, as if a piece of the burden had lifted. "That's just it, Grandma. When I'm with her, I feel whole, like I've been searching for something all my life and finally found it." Rhett's throat tightened. His words carried her back through time, back to her own youth. She remembered being 20 years old, standing in the rain outside the old train station, waiting for a man everyone said she shouldn't love. He had been 15 years older, with a life already built, responsibilities that didn't include her. But he had looked at her with eyes that made the world fall away. She had loved him fiercely, but she had let him go, bowing to pressure from family, from society, from the quiet judgment of neighbors. Now, hearing her grandson speak with that same fire, those old memories stirred like embers that had never fully cooled. She cleared her throat. "Daniel, love like that doesn't come often. But you must ask yourself, does she feel the same way? Does she carry that same fire for you?" He looked away, his fingers tracing the rim of the teacup. "Yes, at least. I think she does. When we talk, it's like time disappears. But she's afraid to. Afraid of what people will say. Afraid of how it looks." Margaret nodded slowly. She understood that fear better than most. She knew how sharp words could cut when they came from people who pretended to care. She also knew the regret that came from silence, from walking away when the heart begged you to stay. Her hand remained on his, steady, warm. Daniel, sometimes the hardest love is the one that feels most right. The question is, are you strong enough to carry it? Because if you choose this, you will have to carry not only your love, but also the weight of other people's opinions. He met her eyes then, his own filled with something raw, something searching. I don't know if I'm strong enough. That's why I came to you. I needed to hear your truth. Margaret's chest tightened again. She wanted to tell him to run, to find someone easier, someone who wouldn't bring him trouble. But when she opened her mouth, the words that came were different. If your heart tells you this is real, then don't let go too quickly. Real love, it doesn't happen every day. And if you walk away because of fear, you'll carry that emptiness with you for the rest of your life. Daniel's eyes glistened, though he blinked quickly, forcing the emotion back. He had always been a private boy, holding his feelings inside. Now, though, she saw the storm in him, a storm that had finally broken open here. In her quiet kitchen, for a long moment, neither of them spoke. The kitchen was filled only with the steady tick of the clock and the smell of bread rising. Margaret felt the strangeness of the moment pressing in the way her grandson's voice carried such passion, the way his story mirrored pieces of her own past, the way the air between them seemed to hum with unspoken truths. Finally, Daniel pushed back his chair slightly, as if gathering himself. His voice dropped to a whisper. But Grandma, there's something else. Something I haven't told you yet. Margaret's breath caught again. His tone had shifted. This wasn't just about an older woman. This was something deeper, something he had been circling around but hadn't yet dared to say. She straightened in her chair, her palms pressing flat against the table. Tell me, Daniel. Whatever it is, don't hold it back. His lips parted, but the words seemed stuck. His gaze drifted over her face, lingering in a way that sent a faint shiver down her spine. Margaret felt her heartbeat quicken. Though she didn't understand why, the quiet between them thickened once more, fragile but charged. And then, in a voice low and trembling, Daniel said, The woman I'm talking about? She's not who you think. Margaret's pulse roared in her ears. The room seemed smaller, the air heavier. She gripped the edge of the table, bracing herself, because in that moment she knew his story was about to take a turn she could never have imagined. The bread sat forgotten on the counter, the yeast rising quietly as the truth rose with it, waiting to be spoken. The kitchen felt heavier now, as though every corner of the room had leaned in to listen. Margaret sat still, her fingers pressed tightly against the wooden table, while Daniel stared at her with eyes that carried both fear and longing. His unfinished words hovered between them. Fragile and dangerous. Margaret broke the silence first, her voice soft but steady. Daniel, if there's more, then say it. Don't keep circling around it. You came here for a reason. Hesitated, his lips parting and closing again, like someone about to step into water too deep. His shoulders slumped, and for a brief moment, he looked so young, again like the boy who once ran barefoot through her yard, asking endless questions about life. But now he was a man caught between duty and desire. Grandma, Kay said finally, his voice thick. What if the woman I love is someone I'm not supposed to love? Margaret's heart jolted. She steadied herself, hiding the quick rise of her breath. His words brought back memories she had locked away for decades. She knew what it was like to love someone the world said was forbidden. She remembered her own secret how. She had once fallen for a man whose life had been tangled in responsibilities that didn't leave room for her. She had walked away, and though she had built a good life later, the shadow of that choice never left her. Her voice was quiet but clear. Daniel, love doesn't always fit neatly into what others think is right. But you must be honest with yourself. Is it love? Or is it something else? Something that feels like love but will fade? He leaned forward suddenly, his hand pressing against the table, his eyes locked on hers. It's not passing, Grandma. I feel it in every part of me. When I'm away from her, I can't stop thinking about her. When I'm near her, I feel alive. And yet every time I look at her, I see fear in her eyes. Fear of being judged. Fear of being wrong. Margaret's chest tightened. The way he spoke stirred something deep within her, something she didn't want to name. She looked away, focusing on the dough sitting on the counter, its surface slowly rising under the cloth. The smell of yeast filled the room, but even that familiar comfort could not steady her racing thoughts. She took a deep breath. Daniel, I want you to listen carefully. Love can bring you joy, but it can also bring you ruin if you're not careful. You need to ask yourself, are you protecting her? Or are you putting her in danger by holding on to this? He shook his head quickly. No, Grandma, I would never hurt her. I want to protect her more than anything. But I also know I can't keep pretending this isn't real. Margaret turned back to him, her gaze sharp but tender. She saw in his eyes not just youthful desire, but something deeper, something stubbornly true. And yet, as she studied him, a chill ran through her. Because the way he looked at her was not the way a grandson usually looked at his grandmother. She pushed that thought away, refusing to let it fully form. Instead, she returned to her memories, her own hidden love, the one she had buried beneath years of duty and silence. She thought of the nights she had lain awake beside her late husband, wondering how her life would have been if she had chosen differently. She thought of the ache that never left, even after decades. Her lips curved into a faint, bittersweet smile. With everything I had, but I let him go because I thought it was the right thing to do. And that decision has lived with me every day since. The weight of her words settled between them. Daniel's hand inched closer to hers on the table, though he didn't touch her. His voice was quiet, trembling. Maybe that's why I came to you. Because you understand. Because you've been where I am. Margaret's pulse quickened. She pulled her hand back slightly, needing space, but her heart wouldn't slow down. The air between them seemed charged, dangerous. It's like a storm about to break. Her eyes searched his face, looking for answers she didn't want to find. Daniel, you said she's afraid? Why is that? What is she afraid of most? He held her gaze for a long moment, then looked down at the table, his fingers tracing invisible lines across the wood. She's afraid of people finding out. Afraid of the questions, the judgment, the shame. Afraid that what we feel will never be accepted. Margaret's throat tightened. His words felt like a mirror reflecting her own past back at her. She saw herself in him, saw the same desperation, the same fire, the same hunger for a love that defied rules. And for the first time, she let herself consider the possibility that had been hovering just out of reach since he arrived. What if the woman he spoke of wasn't out there somewhere? What if she was sitting right here, across the table from him? The thought unsettled her so deeply she stood quickly, moving to the counter as if tending the bread would calm her. Her back was to him, but she could feel his eyes following her, heavy and unrelenting. She spoke without turning around. Daniel, sometimes the heart leads us into places we never thought we'd go. But you must tread carefully. Love can give life, but it can also take it away. There was a pause. Then his chair scraped against the floor. She heard his footsteps, soft but certain, approaching behind her. Grandma, he whispered, his voice trembling but sure. The woman I've been talking about. The one I can't let go of. Margaret closed her eyes, her hands gripping the edge of the counter. She already knew. Somehow, she had known from the moment he first knocked on her door. His voice broke the silence, gentle but devastating. It's you. The words hung in the air, sharp and tender all at once. Margaret's knees weakened, her breath caught, and the room spun around her. The bread sat forgotten once again, rising in silence, while in her kitchen. Love and longing collided with the impossible. The words struck Margaret like a sudden storm. It's you. She gripped the counter harder, her breath caught in her chest, her heart pounding as though she had run miles. Slowly she turned, her eyes searching Daniel's face, hoping she had misunderstood. But his gaze held steady, full of a truth that terrified her. Daniel? She whispered, her voice trembling. He stepped closer, his hands clenched at his sides. his expression raw with emotion. I couldn't hide it anymore. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it was wrong, that it was impossible. But no matter what I did, the feeling grew stronger. Every memory of you, every moment we've shared, it never left me. You are the one, Grandma. It's you. Margaret's knees almost gave way, and she pulled out a chair to steady herself. She sat down slowly, staring at him in disbelief. Her heart aching with 1,000 emotions at once. Shock, sorrow, tenderness, fear. "Daniel," she said. Her voice firmer now, though it shook at the edges. "You can't mean that. I'm your grandmother. I raised you. I watched you grow. This feeling, it isn't love. It's confusion. It's longing for comfort, for family, for belonging." But Daniel shook his head fiercely. "No, I know the difference. This isn't just comfort. This isn't just family. When I look at you, I don't see what the world tells me I should see. I see the woman who understands me, the woman who knows my soul better than anyone else. I can't stop it, Grandma. I don't want to stop it." Margaret pressed her trembling hands together, her thoughts racing. She felt a pang of guilt, of shame, of disbelief. But beneath it all, there was something else, something she dared not admit. For years, she had been alone. For years, she had hidden away the part of herself that longed to be seen, to be cherished, to be loved as a woman, not just as a mother or grandmother. She forced herself to speak. "Daniel, listen to me. What you're feeling is dangerous. It will hurt us both if you let it grow. People would never understand. They would tear us apart. And even if no one ever knew, it would eat away at you. You're young. You have a whole life ahead of you. You deserve someone your age, someone who can walk beside you in the years to come." Daniel's eyes glistened, his jaw set stubbornly. "I don't care about what people think. I don't care about rules or years or what's expected. I care about how I feel. And what I feel is real. I came here today to tell you the truth, even if it destroys me." Margaret's chest tightened. His courage, his desperation, his honesty broke her. She wanted to reach out, to hold him, to soothe him like she had when he was a child. But she also wanted to push him away, to protect him from a path that could only end in heartbreak. She rose slowly from the chair, her hands trembling as she touched his arm. "Daniel, you think this is love? And maybe it is, in your heart. But love is not always meant to be lived. Sometimes love is meant to be carried silently, like a secret, like a burden. I know this because I have carried one myself." His eyes searched hers. "The man you told me about? The one you let go?" Margaret nodded, her throat tightening. "Yes, I loved him and I walked away. It hurt me, but it saved me too. Because some loves are not meant for this world. They are too heavy, too complicated. They burn too brightly to survive." Daniel's voice broke. "So you want me to walk away too? You want me to pretend this isn't real?" Her eyes filled with tears. She reached up, brushing his cheek with the back of her hand, her touch tender and aching. "I want you to live. I want you to love in a way that won't destroy you. I want you to find someone who can give you a future. Not just stolen moments, not just hidden feelings. You deserve more than that." He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch, and for a brief second, the world stilled. Margaret felt the warmth of his skin, the quiet power of his longing, and it tore her apart. Because deep inside, she knew she wasn't untouched by his words. She knew the loneliness inside her heart had answered his in ways she couldn't admit aloud, but she was older. She had lived long enough to know that love wasn't always about taking what you wanted. Sometimes it was about sacrifice, about protecting the one you loved from the pain of following a path that led only to ruin. Daniel's voice came again, low and desperate. "I don't know how to stop feeling this way." Margaret's tears finally fell, sliding down her cheeks. She pulled him into her arms, holding him tightly against her chest like she had when he was small. But this embrace was different, heavy with sorrow, filled with unspoken truths. "You don't have to stop loving," she whispered into his hair. "But you have to learn how to carry it. Love doesn't always mean being together. Sometimes it means letting go for the sake of the other's soul." He clung to her, his shoulders shaking. But it hurts too much. I know, she whispered, her own voice breaking. I know. They stood like that for a long time, two souls bound by love that had crossed a line neither of them had wanted to cross. The kitchen clock ticked, the bread continued to rise, and outside, the wind rattled the autumn leaves against the glass. Finally, Margaret drew back, her hands still resting on his shoulders. She looked into his eyes, steady and firm despite her tears. Daniel, promise me something. Promise me you will live your life. Promise me you won't let this destroy you. Carry it if you must, but don't let it be the only love you ever know. He nodded slowly, his face pale with grief, his eyes red with tears. I promise, Grandma, but I don't know how to let go. Margaret gave him a small, sad smile. Neither did I, but somehow we do. Somehow life teaches us. The words lingered in the quiet kitchen, heavy and haunting. As Daniel sat back down at the table, his hands trembling, Margaret turned once more to the counter. She lifted the cloth covering the bread dough, now risen and ready to be shaped. Her hands moved mechanically, pressing the dough, folding it, kneading it again. But her heart was elsewhere, breaking, holding a secret she could never speak. Behind her, Daniel watched in silence, his chest rising and falling with uneven breaths. He wanted to say more, but the words wouldn't come. Margaret didn't turn around. She knew if she looked into his eyes again, she might falter. And she couldn't falter. Not now. The bread would bake, the day would end, and life would continue. But nothing between them would ever be the same dot in that kitchen. Two hearts had collided in a way the world could never understand. And though neither of them said it again, the truth hung in the air like a quiet echo. It's you.